Hey, what's up, everybody? So, got it all together. Got everything I needed. Put back the right way, and double checked and went over everything to make sure that it was ready to go, so that way I can get myself back and forth to work. The other set, however, didn't really even need anything off of it. I did use a couple of the gears. My teeth had a couple little marks on them, so I ended up taking some of the ones from the other one and put it on this one. Did happen to put in some new blocker rings that were needed in some areas. Didn't use the ones off the other set. They were kind of in bad condition, but I still have a good set of shafts, and I do have some good bearings and some good gears off of the other set. So that'll be something in the near future to build off of. So we're going to start off with, this is a preparation on the installation. So far, a lot of people, what they use is the install tool. I don't use the install tool. It's your preference if you want to use it. Some people say it's a lot easier. I find different ways of doing it. Everybody's got a different preference. So I use zip ties. I only use it in one specific area because you don't want to put too many on there. If you go too far forward, you're not going to be able to cut them once you get it halfway inside the case. I put it to about, if you can see, to about midway here towards the end, and I go all the way around. I use two of them because my zip ties aren't really that long, but they are strong. So make sure all your stuff is lined up before you do it. Make sure all your teeth and everything on your gears are lined up. Nothing's crooked. Make sure your forks are lined up. And that way when you get them in there, it makes it a little bit easier. Make sure nothing falls out of place, because this stuff does get loose once you cut this line, once you cut the zip tie here. But as you can see, I can move it around. Everything stays together. So when I go to install it about halfway, I'll show you all what you got to do next. But this is the beginning, chapter 1. Alright, so here we go. Here we got our gear set down. I'm going to get it installed in there. I'm going to try to use my best video footage as I can to show y'all on how to get this in there. So I'm going to put y'all up in my pocket real quick and see how this works out. What we're going to do is we're going to pick it up. You're going to pick it up from both ends, of course, because that's how you know how you got it out. So let's see. We're going to try to line up, get it set up in there. And they are kind of heavy, so be careful with it. Okay. Get it settled in there. Watch your input shaft seal. You're going to kind of try to get it lined up with the top fork. Let me see here. Get it halfway settled in, and that way y'all can see that you want to try to get this fork slider rod up here to line up back there with your hole. Now the tricky part is going to be getting the actual main shaft lined up with your differential gear, and I will get that set in a second, but I want to show y'all real quick. See how, look how the zip ties are still holding up, and you still have access to get in there and cut once it's in there and set. Sometimes what I usually do is I'll already, once I get them set up in here and rested, I'll go ahead and cut the zip ties and then go ahead and try to fish it up in there. But what I'm also going to tell you is when you go to start to put your reverse gear in, be careful, watch these needle bearings. If you look closely here on your shaft for that one, there's a notch in it. That notch is going to, well, basically you're going to see the hole. The notch has to face on the opposite side, but you want to kind of lift up on your gear set, slide that in there, and get your reverse gear lined up as well at the same time when you go to do that. And let me see, I'll try to get some footage of that in here in just a second. So, and definitely don't forget about your other retainer here. It's going to go, whenever you set it in, it's going to go right back in there in place, and then it's going to line up with the, let's see if I can focus on it for you. Come on. It's going to line up with this mark right here. And then everything should start lining back up the right way. But just give me a second and we'll get there. Okay, so I got my gear set in, and Let's see, my fork's gonna have to be, there you go. Make sure you line up these back here. Mine are still kind of loose right now because I have to put in my reverse gear. I try to put it in first, and I probably wouldn't put it in first. They're always a bit of a struggle getting them back in there, but what you want to do is you want to try to get that bottom one in, fitted in first, and then once you do that, you can pretty much wiggle it in, but it's kind of tight. So, but give it time. It takes anywhere between 15-20 minutes, depending on how bad you're struggling. And I'm not that high up off the ground either, so I don't really have an advantage for leverage. But I mean, it's not bad. You want to make sure that you'll know when you're set in there. It'll go deep in. You'll probably be about 2.5 inches out from the case. But the biggest part is, let me get my other light here. You want to make sure when you're set back there, you want to make sure that your teeth are cleared from the case. And then once you see that, then you'll know that you're set in. But it'll go quite a ways in there. See, like this gear here, that way you can tell what kind of depth perception you're looking at. But you'll feel it. It goes in, and nothing gears will not be loose. So everything will be tight whenever it's set in there. And then, of course, make sure your fork rods are. You see, that one went in pretty easy. Let's make sure those are set. And next step is getting the reverse gear right. I'm gonna have to pull it slightly back out just to fit it back in there. The only reason why I didn't do it was because whenever I was putting it in, you need some sort of an angle to the left to kind of wiggle it in, the gear set into the holes, and you don't want to mangle up anything on your input shaft because you're going into the seal. There's 2 seals, and you don't want to rip those. So you're gonna have to be real gentle with it, but you do need some kind of play left and right. The other reason is they're easy to put on whenever you're first installing without the gears in there, because the threaded bolt, the threaded bolt on it is very, 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 very fine thread, and let's see if you can see. And you do not want to mash up the head or anything on it, because then it's going to be hard to put in. Take you some silicone or bond and go around that washer, so when you go to seal it back up under the case over here, it's not going to leak the fluid out through that hole. But make sure, like I said earlier, when you go to install this, make sure the hole's lined, and you want to hand thread it. Don't just start wrenching on it as soon as you think you have a bite. You want to hand thread the bolt pretty good ways in there, and then that way you'll know that you're threaded in properly and you're not going to cross thread or break the bolt. Be careful, like I said earlier, be careful of the needle bearings, and when you go to put your sprocket on, it'll slide right on there, and then you'll take that washer right there and you'll line that washer up on that dowel right there. And but what you're gonna do here is install. You're gonna have to slide. Be gentle. Try not to pull it completely back off track. Your rods here might try to help you stay in line. Pull it out just enough to where you can slide that gear back in between the bearing and that shaft. Okay? Okay, so about 20 minutes later and a bunch of cussing, because you're probably going to end up doing that, I finally got it set back in. Okay, everything's lined up, and you got that, remember that ring I was telling you about? It goes right in there. You can see up underneath, sits right in there. My reverse gear's not bolted in just yet. It's kind of a struggle. You're going to have to run it reverse gear after, and it's probably gonna come off track. It did for me. Struggled with it for a little bit getting it back in there, but it's sitting in there nice and tight. All the rods, everything up here, that's talking about, all that's pushed in real good. Actually, hold on, I got one runaway right here, but I think it's already in there, because if you look, your reverse gear, everything's lined up, and if your synchronizers, if you look back there, there's positions that they'll be locked in, and you should be able to tell if it is in gear or out of gear, especially if you can take and freely spin your hub and you don't see any of the gears moving, just the ones by the synchros. And pretty good. So we'll go on to the next step, which is to setting these shift selector plate. I usually want to do that first to make sure that I can see everything outside before closing the deal over here. So, okay, shift selectors back together, bolted down, cables are back on there. Sometimes most people, the first time you pull your shifter selector plate, like I mentioned before, you might want to reseal it. I've resealed mine, so I know I have a pretty good thick amount of gasket on there to keep that from leaking. But most people want to do that. Okay, and then you want to go in there and visually inspect to make sure that your selector's all lined up on your let me look at this real quick. Hold on. Okay, you want to make sure, it's lined up back there. And then the other thing is also you want to go ahead and start cleaning off the housing here and get all the leftover silicone off of there, so that way you can get it prepared to reseal. And always make sure you got your dowels. Your dowel pin is what's going to help that case line back up, and you should have one there. And then there should be, actually I think there's only one when you look at the plate hole here. But yeah, clean up all your silicone. Make sure that it's a good clean surface before you go ahead and stick it back on. Alright, so I got the first half of the case on. Sorry about the lighting, guys. I'm kind of in between outside light and everything, but I'm trying to get this as covered up as best as possible here between the lighting and the glare. Okay, so we got the outer cover on, and this is one of the outer covers. Now, to make sure that you get these on there, because you'll probably be best to use a rubber mallet too when you get this lined up, is you got a hole here for your reverse gear shaft, and of course you got your input and main, and then you're also going to have one of your the fork sliders, or the fork slider rod. It's going to have its own hole too, and that you want to make sure that lines up with the hole before you start pressing it in. And what you want to really do is you want to wiggle, in, out, in, out, in, out. Just kind of, making sure it all goes smooth around the bearings and everything starts to line up. And once you actually get these faced in there and they start to go in smooth, and you get that partially in there and this one in there, take the rubber mallet and just kind of hit like here. Don't hit hard, but kind of tap it in there, kind of help it get in there, get nice and snug. And then once you finally get it flat up against the rest of the transmission case, then you can go ahead and start putting in your 13mm bolts all the way back around. To me, honestly, a lot of people prefer torque sequences, but I kind of make up my own. Like, I'll do one on the bottom, snug it. Do one on the top, tighten it, and then tighten. Just kind of go in like a cross. But a lot of people say, oh, you'll warp stuff that way. But from my personal experience through all this doing, the only thing I usually torque down in sequence like that will be like oil pan gaskets and a cylinder head. But other than that, like this stuff here, this casing stuff, I mean, as long as you put enough sealant around in the areas, you're going to be fine. Just don't crank down on the first bolt you put in. You need to kind of get it set in first before you crank down. But usually I start with one side, and I know if I get that one in there, I'll just tighten that one down and then go ahead and tighten that one down, and it'll be fine. But if you have if you want to do by the book, then go ahead and do your partial torque sequence and then your final torque sequence. The next thing I'm going to try to do is to try to show y'all about the snap rings, putting them in. I haven't cleaned the surface of this up just yet on the outside. I usually save that for the last part. But let me go ahead and do this while I got y'all's attention here. Let me see where I put my rings out. Okay, I put my rings right here. I'm going to try to put y'all in my pocket to try to see if y'all are watching, or got a good view to watch. But here's the snap ring plier. Okay, now they're going to be two different sizes, and we all know the big one came off of this one and the smaller one came off of this one. So let's start with this one here. Now they kind of need some help on this particular snap ring plier because it's kind of big. So what I usually do is I go in sideways here and just kind of walk it in. Okay. Now you may not get it perfect the first time, but you'll kind of see, I'm already having problems here. Okay, so but you'll kind of just squeeze and try to fit it on there, and if you get it just enough, and boom, closes right in. Grab your second one and make sure you can pull these out. You know, they do have some play in them, so you can pull them out to make sure that your seat line is facing in a good position for you to get it on. Okay, so let me go ahead and I hope y'all are being able to see this. I can't really see what's going on in my pocket, so all right, kind of fish that one on there, get that together, walk it to the end. Well, don't jump off the end. Okay, let's see. And squeeze and feed the fat end in first and push that side in and boom. And double check to make sure that you are snapped in. And I'm sorry if it comes out blurry. The autofocus, I don't think these phones really have a good autofocus. You have to kind of tap where you want it to be. So everything looks good there. It's nice and tight and it's seated in there. You definitely want to make sure it's seated in because you do not want this to pop off or you're going to be in big trouble when you're driving. Okay? But see, there's like a little bit of play you can move these in and out with. And then don't forget, put your reverse gear back, and if you don't have it clipped, original clip area for it, just zip tie it. And let's see what else we got going on here. And of course, you know, a lot of people want to know where's the fill plug. Okay, and if you didn't catch up with my latest video on the disassemble, let me go through this with you real quick. This is your fill plug. You want to take a screwdriver. Don't puncture or rip the rubber. You're going to have leaks. We just kind of help pry it out. It's a tight plug. It's just a rubber plug. Okay, and then your drain is going to be right there. That's that 8mm Allen key, or you can even use it in a hex socket too. So, or Allen socket, which, you know, give you more torque if you use a wrench. And then of course, like I said, put some bond agent on that reverse gear shaft. Let's see. This is the stuff that I'm using. It's pretty good stuff. It's supplied here at work. We use it all the time when we're putting engines together, water pumps, oil pans, and even sometimes valve covers that require a little bit. Okay, sorry my video feed was interrupted. But like I was saying about this stuff here, you can see if you can go by your local motorcycle shop like Honda and or even Suzuki. Ask them about a bond agent if you can't get your hands on a bond agent. Hey, most of the time if you go by a dealership and you say, hey, I need to get some bonding agent, not silicone agent, this stuff is really good. It's really strong and it holds up really well. So get your hands on a set of that if you can, or a can of that, sorry. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to move on to is going ahead and cleaning up that cover and cleaning up that surface there so I can do the finalization of getting everything back together on here. And then I'll go ahead and start adding the oil back in. Okay, so we got everything tied together, ready to go, ready to fill up with some fluid, and put the battery and everything back together, put the tire on, and we're ready to roll. Real quick, I'm going to cover something that a lot of people ask about, and don't be ashamed. It's real easy. A lot of people were asking about, you know, how do you fill it or check the fluid level or anything like that. So, right here is the fill plug, and this is a hose that I got from a friend of mine. And what you do is you want to get it in there quite a bit, a little bit ways in there, so that way it doesn't come pouring back out when you fill it. But what I do is I use a funnel and put the funnel in the hose. That way when you're pouring it in, it goes down into the case, and make sure it's not kinked. So what you're going to do is you're going to pour it in there until you know, it takes about 2.5 quarts. Sometimes I've actually gotten almost 3 quarts in there. It depends on if you're getting all the fluid completely out in the back by the differential. And you'll pour it in about 2.5 or so. It'll start dripping back out of the hole. Once it does that, then you know you're full. You can either wait until it completely quits dripping, or you can just go ahead and put the plug back in there. It's not going to be by much that's, you know, in there, so you shouldn't have any issues with that. So, but that's it. I'm hoping that this helps. I know everybody's got different ways of doing this, and this is my way of doing it. So I hope this helped y'all out a little bit. And I want to make a shout out to my Mopar dealer that I know of. Thank you very much for the parts that I needed, and at the time you got them to me. So that was really helpful, man, because I was kind of like a sitting duck the other day when I had everything pulled apart. I'm just like, well, I know I'm not putting this in there, so. But yeah, I'm hoping that these new parts last a while, and you know, it's been fun doing it. It's a struggle, but you know, putting this stuff back in there, it's hard whenever, you know, you're by yourself and you got to lift all that stuff trying to shove it back in there. But some people are bigger, you know, I'm, you know, but not that big, so, you know, can't really muscle that stuff in there like that. But I did, and it's finished, so. Alright guys, I'm going to sign off, and if you have any questions, just ask, and I'll try my best to help y'all out, and I hope this, like I said, I hope it helps y'all out, because it's useful, you know. It's good to be able to fix that stuff and not have to, you know, go down the road later on saying, damn, I should have done that last week when I had the chance. It's good to do it. And you want to keep these cars running, so. All right, guys.